when we encounter death of a loved one, we make a tear, either in clothing or in a ribbon which is attached to the clothing and treated as part of the clothing, and we recite a bracha, a blessing. So, Fred, if you'll recite with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. We turn this moment to God, whom we say is Dayan ha'emet, the judge of truth, or the true judge, the one who knows the truest feelings of our hearts at this moment. Another of our oldest traditions, again traced to the Bible, to the very first book of the Bible, to the biblical book of beginnings, to Bereshit, is the element of the funeral service in which it is members of the family who come forward to speak words of memory, words of eulogy. So, in keeping with that truly ancient tradition, we'll hear first from Fred and then from Diana.
So I'm both happy and sad as a result of the events that occurred here today. It's been in the planning stage for more than 1 year, but really much longer, as you will hear. Dory and I visited our mother's grave, both together and separately, probably 10 or more times over these past 70 years. But it always gave both of us the same heavy heart, that whenever we left, there was a recognition that it could be the last time anyone would visit her grave again in Holland. When Dory's breast cancer reemerged in 2003, from a state of remission which lasted almost 18 years, we decided it was time for us to purchase a family plot in this cemetery. So we purchased one with 4 places. One for Dory, one for a person to be named later, and one each for Rachel and me. Of course, you can't see it. It's on the other side of that family headstone. So now we have the real possibilities of bringing our mother here, and we spoke about it on numerous occasions, always thinking there was time later to actually make the arrangements. But for now, let's just keep it the way it is. But after Dory died, the burden of that decision fell alone on me. And I decided more or less on the spur of the moment, while visiting Holland that was, about a year ago, that the time was finally right. Rachel and I had booked a Tulips and Windmills river cruise that sailed from Amsterdam in early May of 2016. And we decided to go a few days early to spend extra time in Amsterdam to visit my mother's grave and see some familiar places of my childhood. When we arrived, a series of unusual coincidences and good luck allowed us to lay the framework of what we accomplished today. I will tell that story some other time, and why it took so long to get it accomplished. Maybe at the unveiling ceremony, which we call the unveiling ceremony, which is going to happen on June 4th. Originally, it was only be one ceremony, but because of unusual circumstances and demands by the rabbinate in Holland, they would not permit us to hold the remains above ground for any longer than absolutely necessary. But now I would like to tell you a different story, a different side about my thoughts, my feelings and emotions that were part of what got us here today. It goes back to the Yizkor sermon that Rabbi Lindemann made a few months ago on the last day of Pesach. He chose as his theme the particularly moving poem called Baba Yar that was written by Yevgeny Yevtushenko, one of the famous Russian dissidents from the middle of the last century. He had just died, and his obituary was in the front page of the New York Times which is the paper that the rabbi claims he never reads in protest. But yet he quotes what happens in the New York Times almost weekly. It recalls the story on the Times recalls the infamous place in the Ukraine. I'm talking about the poem. Recalls the infamous place in the Ukraine, where during the Holocaust, where in 2 days 30,000 Jews were shot dead by machine guns and buried in a pit. This is the poem of Babi Yar. Well, eventually the Matryoshka doll becomes the new focus of the sermon, with each layer of doll representing evolving generations of history from the rabbi's own family. And as my head is still trying to take in all these converging emotions that he's presenting, he happens to mention that the usual translation for the word Yizkor is remembrance, but can also mean fulfilling a promise. Suddenly, upon hearing the word promise, after linking it to all the symbols and memories he had just laid out in front of us, I did not hear another word he said. Suddenly, I realized that all the examples and the parallels that he had drawn were really my story that brought us here today. Of course, the facts were different. The place of Babi Yar for me was Bergen-Belsen. The poem of Babi Yar were the numerous times I had recited to students and other groups about my own experiences during the Holocaust, with the recurring theme of the heroic role my mother had played in the unlikely survival of Dory and me from that terrible place where so many others had died. And they were closely linked to the unspoken promise that I made each year during the Yizkor prayer that I could not leave my mother's grave in a place that will never be visited by anybody after Dory and I are gone. I know that Dory had the same fear and concern, but we did not have the courage to disturb the peaceful repose of our mother's resting place. But it wasn't like we were never going to do it sometime in the future, not just now. Well, as witnessed by the grave next to this one, Dory's grave right there, Dory's future ended too soon. So it was up to me to carry out the pledge we both made in our hearts and in our minds, which culminated in the sad yet joyous occasion of being reunited once again. I'm going to let Diana and others who want to speak.
Freddie asked me to speak as somebody who might remember his mother, who I know only from the memories of my own mother. Some of you know Tante Leah, my mother. My mother and Dory's mother were very, very, very close. As Nicole and Melina, they're like so close. Apparently, and I heard this also from Doriana, she was an incredible woman, my mother, and also Klara. She was vivacious, and apparently a lot of the good qualities of Dory, I think she echoed her mother's good qualities. She seemed to have been full of life, always laughing, very, very generous, very kind. And Dory and I are born 3 months apart. Dory's older, 3 months older than me. And apparently they were pregnant, the two mothers were pregnant together. And I think they lived close to each other. They spent almost every day together. And then when I was born, apparently Dory and I played together all the time, which of course I don't remember. She was always positive, always smiling, and really like a ray of sunshine. And if you know the Kurtzes at all, it was very close clan, sort of like the Kurtz now. And it was very hard kind of to enter that clan if you were not a blood brother. So I think the two of them bonded together a lot. They were married to two brothers who were very close, and they became like sisters, so close. And that's what I know from my mother. So after I spoke to, Freddie asked me what do I remember, the only thing I really know about Dory and Freddie's mother is from photographs. This is me and Dory.
It's a beautiful picture. I've never seen that picture.
I've never seen it either.
I'll pass it around.
It's a wonderful picture.
And I'll pass them all around. Now we come to the next picture, which is about a year and a half. I'll pass it around later. A year and a half later, and here is Freddie with his mother, baby Freddie, with Dory and me and our mothers. They did everything together. They vacationed together. I think this probably was in Trieste or Abbazzia where they would go on vacation. You see Dory and I playing together. You see the 3 months difference, a little older, little fatties. And you see Freddie with a little guy here.
You can say traditionally in Europe, the children didn't wear bathing suits, so they're two little girls that are completely naked.
And probably you.
And me too.
Had a diaper on.
I had a diaper.
So I'm showing these pictures as what is my memory of Tante Klara, and also to show, I want to bring out the closeness.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I apologize, everyone, because I'm really not feeling well at all. I have a terrible migraine, so I'm not my normal self. And normally I could get up here and say what I'm thinking coherently, but I'm not actually sure I can. So forgive me if it doesn't come out the way it should. But it occurred to me, that we're all here together. This is, everyone who cares so much about Daddy and GPF, Freddie, whatever you call him. I don't know what else. Fred.
Hey, you.
And I felt it just really important just to recognize, a few really, I think maybe not obvious things, but this is the matriarch of the Kurz family, and none of us got to meet her except for you. And
Diana.
you, who's here anyway. But I do feel like we all know the story of Daddy and Dory's survival in the Holocaust. And I think we all know that survival would not have happened without Klara, his mother. The resourcefulness, the resilience, the creativeness, the intelligence, the smartness, the craftiness, everything she did was to save them, and of course to save herself. And those qualities, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the matriarch of our family was that important, and with all those qualities that I think came to Daddy, to Dory certainly, and I actually hope that they're genetic, because the resilience and the resourcefulness, the intelligence, the smartness, the love, giving up of yourself for the benefit of your children. I know that I feel like your children certainly feel that way, but I hope that it's genetic, and I hope it's passed down to the rest of our family, because I don't want it to be forgotten, because she gave the ultimate sacrifice. And she ultimately died saving her children.
True. Very true.
Everything she did was to save them. And it's such a powerful story. And it's a story that I don't want to be lost today, the day of her funeral, her real funeral, here with you. And so while I'm hoping that it's genetic, if it's not genetic and it's not inside of you, at least make it be an inspiration for everyone of what you can do and the impact you can have on someone else's life. Because the impact that she had on Dory and Daddy's life, he's here because of it. And it's that inspiration, it's that impact that I want you all to know that you can have on someone else's life. Everything you do, every decision you make can make an impact on the people you love, the friends you have, and even the people you don't know. And I don't want to lose sight of all those decisions that she made, not knowing how they would come out, but it resulted in his life, and therefore my life, and Sharon and Natalie's life, and therefore your life. And I want you to remember what she did. And everything you do, just think about the impact it has on humanity, on your family, on your friends, because it's the most important thing. And you don't always know how it's going to result, but you need to think ahead and think about what it can do, the impact it can have. So have that resilience, if it's not genetic, resourcefulness, the grit. We all talk about grit. Well, that's the ultimate grit.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank her for that, because we didn't get to do it when she was here.
Wonderful words. Wonderful words. didn't need the paper. You didn't need the speech. You didn't need the paper.
I want to thank all of you for making this journey with us for the last 13 months.
Yeah, for that part of it, certainly.
It's a 13-month journey, and you've all been a part of this.
The truth
in
is,
some
though,
way or another, hearing some thoughts, some dialogue about what we've gone through, what we haven't gone through, what we need to go through, all the different aspects of what it took to get where we are today. And it wasn't easy, and it wasn't nice sometimes, but we did it. It worked, and we got there, and we fulfilled the promise, which Freddie made to Dory, and basically he made to his mother, to bring her back to the family. And her family is here. We're all family.
Yeah, I just want to say also, it's not only for my chavara here, our friends, it's not just a 13-month process, but for you, our dearest friends, it's a 25 to 30-year process that we were all together, all of us. We're that close. You are all my sisters and brothers. And we stood with each other through all kinds of other difficulties. But that's why I wanted you to be here today with my immediate closest family to share this moment with us. So brothers and sisters, thank you. And children, of course, they're the treasures of our life. So I almost don't have to say it, but I don't want them to think, because I'm speaking to the youth brothers and sisters and the wonderful friends and adult family, that they are anywhere less. As a matter of fact, you are the reason and the most important. So I'm so happy that you're here to witness this. Thank you for being here.
You wanted to say something about last night, Fred?
Okay, yeah, maybe I will. I'm not sure if I would have the courage when in front of the bigger crowd to speak about this. The remains arrived in the coffin that you saw here yesterday around 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And I asked Bernie if he would allow me to look inside the casket after it arrives. I'm not sure if they ever allow that, but he said you could. Maybe it's common, I don't know. But remember what the process was. The process was that her remains were in the ground, and they hired a special person from Israel who knows how to remove remains of human remains in a halachic, Jewish halachic way, and to conserve them to the maximum possible way. So they had to dig into the ground, remove whatever coffin or remains, bones or whatnot. So in my mind, I expected to see at least remains being earth, that they scoop up the earth with any bones and anything else that was around, maybe even part of the coffin. So even though I casually asked, would you let mine, a week ago I said to Bernie, would you let me see the remains? When I approached the funeral home, I had a sudden, very scary feeling that I would be overcome. Who would know? I mean, just seeing bones of a stranger in a museum sometimes make me feel queasy. So it occurs to me, what would I see when we open this coffin? And we came into the room and Bernie showed me the coffin. He says the coffin is a little small. It turns out because for reasons of the cemetery here, it was limited to 72 inches, the coffin. But it turns out the coffin that was used is only 60 inches, which right away was a clue that there wasn't much left. So I said to Bernie, what am I going to see? I said, Bernie, tell me what I'm going to see. Kind of warn me ahead of time that if I'm going to see something that's really going to make me feel, I don't know, maybe faint. He says, no, just if you're all right, I don't think you're going to be unhappy. So he opens the coffin just an inch or two, and I see inside. All I see is silver foil, a very heavy foil, over something, a round object. It seems like it could have been the head. I said, well, what's below it? Close a little back further, and I see something which is shaped like a body, but it's very short. It's only about 30 or 40 inches long. And it's all wrapped up in this foil with tape on it. I have felt a huge sense of relief, tell you the truth. I didn't have to see real bones, but the shocking thing was there was nothing else in the coffin that I could see except for this rolled up foil with obviously something inside which is mounted, which is shaped like what a body would be. I said to Bernie, how did it get this way? He says, he's sure that there weren't many remains, but they put it in this, they put earth or whatever they dug up into this form of what would be the size of a child, actually. And they covered it with this foil and they taped it. And I said, Bernie, are you going to open it up and see what's inside? He says, oh no, he says, we're not doing anything. So the coffin was totally clean inside, not a shred of sand or dust even on the inside. Only this foil folded over on a mound where the area where the head was the only thing that I could see. Could have been really bones or really something left. I said, well, what happened to the coffin? He says, in 70 years, a coffin is totally goes back to dirt. There is no, because I said, would they have put the coffin in there with it? He said, if it was material, they would have. But apparently, there was nothing like that in there. So I was relieved in a sense. At least I know what's going into the ground. Coffin. And the Dutch, as I've told many of you, are extremely their whole Jewish structure there, of all the whole organized religion is very orthodox, and they would only do things in the strict as they see halachic law. Of course, we also in the conservative movement go according to strict halachic law. However, we allow halacha to be evolved. And it's just, so it's the same halacha, and I say this mostly for the kids and people who may not be aware of this. It's the same halacha as the Orthodox use, just that we allow some interpretation in the modern sense. Thank you, Rabbi.
I've been on this journey with Fred for a while, and across that time frame, we've sat together on a number of occasions to discuss today, and he told me some of the story, not all of it. I'm not sure he or anybody can tell all of it. But he told me some of the story, and of course it made its impressions upon me, very much in keeping with what you said, Carolyn. But I want to put it into a context that comes out of our tradition. So as we prepared for today, I found myself reflecting repeatedly on the passage from Psalm 23, which we recited as part of the service just a while ago. Gam ke'elech begates al mavet, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow. Now clearly, the psalmist found himself in a life-threatening situation and survived. It is the psalm of a survivor. Klara Biberstein Kurz walked through a valley of the shadow like no other in history. She walked through that valley of the shadow with 2 children and saw them to safety. It is a remarkable story, Fred, which you shared with me. and about what you've spoken to student groups in our community over the years. And most of you here know the story, so I'll not attempt to recount all of what Fred has told me. Instead, just a few comments and impressions. In 43, somehow Klara found out about a German plan to exchange Jews for trucks and got herself and the children on the list, and then had to have the children smuggled back into the camp prior to the departure. But the plan failed. There was no exchange, and instead there was a train to Bergen-Belsen, Gates al Mavet. They were in the Valley of the Shadow there for a year and 4 months. And somehow she kept the children who entered the camp at ages, 6 and 8, maybe?
6 and 8 in the
Made
beginning.
sure that they had food as much as possible, certainly by giving up some of her own meager ration. She fought back against the lice which carried typhus for as long as she could, and when Fred became ill and was taken to the infirmary, she found a way to get herself assigned to work there so that she could personally care for him. And then there was a train that was supposed to go to Terezin but was stopped and liberated by the Russians at Trobitz. By then she had typhus, and Dory and Fred had to carry her from the train into an abandoned house where they found jars of food and, as Fred says, onions and potatoes in the cellar. Wonderful. They were there for a month before the Red Cross even knew about them. And then 2 weeks on a train to Amsterdam, and Klara was too weak to survive, suffering probably from a cancer, was in the hospital for 6 months. She managed to place Fred and Dory with friends whom they boarded, and during that time she wrote letters to family in the United States, which eventually led to her children coming to this country. But she could not escape the shadow of death, even though she saw her children through that valley. She died in 1946 and was buried in Holland. And yet, as we know, that is not the end of the story. Fred has shared some of what brings us here today, to carry Klara Biberstein Kurz to this resting place. Here she will be with family, and all who visit will remember her as a mother who watched over her children, and her soul will continue to watch over all of the family, and her spirit will be a source of blessing to grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and generations to come, such that we can say, in the words of the psalm, Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, goodness and mercy shall follow her. V'shavti b'reit Adonai le'orech yamim, and she will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When a casket is placed in the grave, we say, Al mikoma tavo v'shalom. May she go to a resting place in peace. But that word makom in Hebrew is also a name for God. And so what it also means is may she go to her God in peace. V'yashov ha'afar al ha'aretz kishahaya, v'haruach tashuv el Elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. May you be comforted, Fred, and all of the family and friends in knowing what you've accomplished today in bringing her to this resting place. And so I'll ask everybody to rise for a final prayer. Uhutzror bitrachayim et nishmata haranahu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom ha'mishkava v'nomar Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Klara Biberstein Kurz, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the kind, caring, and loving deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal with you, O Lord, as it is in the bond of memory with all who are here. You, O Lord, are her portion. May she rest in peace. And we say, Amen. Will you recite Kaddish with me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yitkadal
v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Shalom b'bromov, uyaseh shalom. Oleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Amen.
We always conclude by placing earth in the grave. It's known in our tradition as chesed shel emet, the truest form of kindness, understood as a kindness that for the person we performed it, that person could never return to us in this life. There are a number of customs that surround this. One is to begin with the shovel inverted upside down, and in that way indicate that this is not simply the normal course of shoveling earth. And then we turn it over and we continue to put some more earth in the grave. And when we're finished, we don't pass the shovel from hand to hand. We place it back in the earth and the next person takes it. That's again a way of indicating that while we want to do everything possible for a person who's very much loved down to the very last deed with our own hands, this is a mitzvah that's performed reluctantly.
Being here means a lot to me. Girls, you're really great. And you know, this is really all for you. I don't know if you really know that. You don't realize it yet how important it is for me that you guys are here and you've heard the talk and understand that this act that we just went through is of prime importance for not only for me but for the whole family. And you should be very happy that in the future, and I hope you've taken on as a real responsibility to come here on a regular basis and look at Dory's grave, my mother's grave, and I'm going to be right there, but my grandma and I are going to be right on those two graves.
Not yet.
I know we don't want to talk about it, but it's reality. And while we're sad sometimes, and even though I have tears in my eyes, the truth is I'm not sad. I'm really happy. It's just emotionally, it's hard to take it all in one way, in a way that does not make you cry, because I cry sometimes when I'm happy.
I love tears.
You tear up too. So this is how it is. But you know, please, how important it is for me that you guys were here, and I'm so happy about that. I mean, I'm just happy that you decided to come, because I know how difficult it was for you to change, or your mother to change all those arrangements that we had. But it was so important for me that you were here. It meant everything to me. If this had done without the grandkids, it wouldn't have meant as much to me at all. So this is my reward, and I hope it's your reward too in the long run. When you grow up and see when you were here when this will happen, because I'm hoping that you'll visit our grave, which will be right next to my mother's grave. Your grandma and I will both be in those places, the two spots that are remaining. All right, so last we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, let's see you back to the house. I'm going to tell the other kids, but maybe it's as obvious maybe not more obvious to you, that this whole thing, the fact that you, my grandchildren, were here, meant everything to me for this whole ceremony.
I was delighted to be here for it.
I know you were. I think that's why I believe you understand that, the importance of that from a family perspective.
100%.
So I'm really happy, and tears don't mean I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could be happy with tears also, and I want you to know that. It's sad in some ways, but the happiness is my real emotion. I'm so happy we got accomplished. I'm so happy you were here. I'm so happy it was a respectful service.
Yeah.
It was everything. And
I agree with you 100%.
I want to say the same thing to you. You heard me. Sorry your brother isn't here. I tried him and tried in many ways to get him to come and convince him, but I haven't yet. But I believe he was here. He wanted to be here, but I know it was just too late for him to try to change things.